I'm commonly asked a variety of questions immediately after a new score is created, specifically related to the score's layout on the page. In this video, I'll answer some of those questions for you, hopefully to ease your mind as you begin working in your score. The most common question I'm asked after score creation is why are there only a few bars on the screen and how can I add more bars? So if we zoom out a little bit, Control minus or Command minus, and I'm going to use page up so we can see this page a little bit better. Now the simple answer to the question about bars is don't worry, Sibelius will create bars for you as you go along and input notes. But if you'd still like to create more bars ahead of time before you begin inputting notes, it's very simple to do. To add bars to the end of your score, you can use the simple shortcut Control B or Command B on Mac, and that is B for bars. And you can hold down the shortcut to add multiple bars to your score quickly to see how your score's layout is going to appear across several systems and pages. If you prefer to work from the ribbon, you can add bars from the Home tab in the Bars group with that picture of the bar where the little green plus is, where it says Add. Another common question I get after creating a new score is what if you want to add another instrument to the score, or what if you need to delete an instrument from the score? You can always get back to the instrument dialog window by hitting the letter I on your QWERTY keyboard. And it is that simple, the letter I for instrument. The instrument dialog should look familiar to you. It's the same window that you used to add instruments during the score creation process. I'm going to select both of my piano staves on the right-hand side, and you can use Control or Shift-click to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and delete these from the score. So with them selected, choose Delete from Score. And Sibelius will warn you and ask you if you really want to do that. I'm going to go ahead and click Yes. And you'll see the adjustment. There are no more piano staves here, and if I click OK, now my score has no piano staves. Another question I often hear is why does my music not fill the page? You can see there's a lot of space here, for example, on page 1. And this is a very good question to ask. Fitting the music on the page is really one of the most important things that you need to do while using a notation program. So I'm going to provide you with 2 steps that you can take to ensure that you get your score off to a good start. First, do not go in and drag the staves around. Don't think that you have to fill this space up by clicking here and dragging these down. That's not the best way to work. So if you've dragged your staves around, please undo those changes using Control or Command Z, and we'll see if we can get Sibelius to make the adjustments automatically for you. Now the 2 features that you should work with initially to get your music to fit on the page are justification and staff size. Now before we continue, let's go to the View tab, into Invisibles, and let's check page margins. That way we'll have a better idea of how our music is going to fit within the page margins. Okay, now we're ready to discuss justification. Now in printing, to justify means to fit something exactly into a desired length. In this case, it means that we're going to fit our staves exactly into the length of the page. Think of it this way. We're going to anchor the bottom staff down here to the bottom page margin and the top staff to the top page margin, and then equally spread out our staves and systems across the page, essentially filling out the page with our score. In order to see justification at work, make sure that your view of the score includes a page in the score that's not justified. In other words, a page that has a lot of blank or white area on the paper showing at the bottom. So if we go to the very end of the score, and I'm going to use the End button to get there, you'll see that I have a page 2 that's pretty well filled out. If you add a couple of bars to that, Control or Command B, we'll end up with a page 3, and the End key here, we'll end up with a page 3 that's not very full. So now we've got a lot of space down here. In other words, the bottom staff is not justified to the bottom margin. We find the justification settings in the Engraving Rules window, which you can find on the left-hand side of the Appearance tab in the House Styles group. Here it is here, and you can use Control-Shift-E or Command-Shift-E to bring up Engraving Rules. With Engraving Rules open, you'll need to make your way to the Staves page here, and in the middle of the Staves page is a section devoted to justification. To get started with justification, you'll only need to be concerned with the first percentage value here where it says Justify Staves when the page is at least 65% full, which is the default percentage value in Sibelius. And what this means is that in order for my staves to justify to the bottom margin, my page needs to be at least 65% full. So let's cancel out of Engraving Rules to examine the last page to see how full it is. So if we cancel, and we might need to zoom out just one level here, Control minus. You can see from this page margin to this page margin, we're not quite 65% of the way down. Now you can force your staves to justify by clicking and dragging them down. So if I grab the violin, let's say, and I start dragging it down, when the page becomes 65% full, then Sibelius will justify those staves for me. So now you have an answer to another common question: why, when I drag my staves around, do they jump up and down and go a little bit crazy? It's justification trying to work for you, and you're working against it by dragging your staves around and confusing the process. So again, don't drag your staves around, and if you do, use Control or Command Z to undo. So let's go back to engraving rules and change the justification percentage, Control-Shift-E or Command-Shift-E. And you'll see that if we set justification to a lower value like 30%, let's type in 30 and click OK, the last page of your score will justify down to the bottom margin automatically, and that's because the page is more than 30% full. Now obviously this is not desirable either, as you have too much space now in the middle of the page. So let's go back to engraving rules, Control-Shift-E, and let's set the percentage to a higher number. Let's set it to 100%. Now, a value of 100% or higher essentially turns the justification feature off because your page cannot be 100% full. So when we click OK, you'll not only notice that the last page is not justified, but the other pages are no longer justified as well. With justification off, nothing snaps appropriately to the bottom margin. Also, with justification off or set to 100%, you do have more freedom to drag your staves around, so we can drag these around with a little bit more freedom without things jumping around. But you'll see if I continue doing this that I can't drag it to the next page because I end up with a bunch of space up here. So there's going to be other problems that arise as we do this. Again, I'm going to undo all of those changes I just made with the dragging. So the short lesson to learn here is that justification is necessary, and you'll have to work with the justification percentage to get the setting right for every score that you work with. Now let's visit engraving rules one more time, Control-Shift-E or Command-Shift-E. And let's set the justification percentage to something that we know works for this score, somewhere around the default of 65%, and click OK. It's obvious by looking at the score that even when your systems are justifying properly to the bottom margin, your score may still not look correct and publish ready. You may have two systems with a lot of empty space in the middle of one page, like we do on page 1. You may have 3 systems and they might even be a little squished together. You may have 2 systems at the end with a lot of space on the bottom. So we need to make a decision for ourselves. Do we make everything on the page larger and keep a 2-system per page layout? Or do we make everything on the page smaller and fit 3 systems on the page? Whatever you choose to do, you'll accomplish it by adjusting the score's staff size. And you can find the staff size and adjust it in the ribbon in the Layout tab's Document Setup. So go to the Layout tab, here's the Document Setup, and this is your staff size. The size of everything on the page in Sibelius is relative to the staff size. So if I increase the staff size by clicking this little upward arrow, we're not only going to increase the size of the staves, but we're also going to increase all of the font sizes and the sizes of everything else that you would see on the page. And you'll see the effect this has on the score. And this is what we would do if we wanted only 2 systems per page. Now, if we want to fit more music on the page, we'll have to decrease that staff size. So if we decrease it enough, we'll end up with 3 systems on each page. And when adjusting the staff size, pay special attention to the first page, as it's often the most difficult page to work with because of all of the headers, like the title and composer name, that are taking up valuable space. And don't worry about getting the staff size perfect right now. You'll end up going back later for a final adjustment when you prepare your final score for printing anyway. For now, make sure you have enough space on the page so that you can comfortably see the division between the systems and staves. And don't get staff size confused with zooming. The page may appear to be too small for me to work with right now, but I can always use Control or Command plus or minus. If we click here, and I can zoom in to work. Now, if you really want to check to see if you like the staff size that you've chosen, you'll need to print a page of the document. If you print this and it's too small for your liking, then you may wish to increase the staff size and fill the page with only 2 systems. But you may print a large 2-system copy of this score and then decide that it's too big. So as you begin working in Sibelius, it will take you a little while to interpret what a size 6 staff size is versus a size 9 staff size, but printing will put it into perspective for you. A final note about staff size. There's one situation you may get into where Sibelius offers to adjust the staff size for you. It does this for you when you add a lot of instruments to your score. So let's go back to the Instruments dialog, I for Instruments. And just for fun, I'm just going to click a lot here on the piano a couple times, and we'll add a lot of piano staves, and click OK. And then Sibelius is going to ask me if it's okay to decrease the size of the music to fit it on the page. And what Sibelius is really asking you is if it can decrease your staff size for you. So if this ever happens, it's probably a good idea for you to go ahead and allow Sibelius to do this by clicking yes. And if I zoom out, you'll see how many staves it's now fit on the page, and you'll notice I have a very small staff size. Now I'm going to undo that because I don't want that many staves. Control Z, and we can zoom in a little bit and get back to our score. The only other immediate option you have for adjusting the page layout of your score is to change the orientation of the page from portrait to landscape. And you can do that in the Layout tab in the Document Setup group also. Here's the button for orientation. If I click on that, I can choose portrait or landscape. And remember, if you adjust the orientation, you may need to once again work with justification and staff size to get the nice layout that you're looking for. Okay, so your score should look much better now than it did when we originally created it, and you should have a better understanding as to why justification and staff size are important features for setting up an initial score layout. Obviously, there are many more layout features in play here, and we'll discuss many of them before this course comes to an end.